Hello, friends. Today we're going to read My Father's Dragon, Chapter 4. My father finds the river. The jungle began just beyond a narrow strip of beach. Thick, dark, damp, scary jungle. My father hardly knew where to go, so he crawled under a wahoo bush to think and ate 8 tangerines. There he is under the wahoo bush. The first thing to do, he decided, was to find the river, because the dragon was tied somewhere along its bank. Then he thought, if the river flows into the ocean, I ought to be able to find it quite easily if I just walk along the beach far enough. So my father walked until the sun rose, and he was quite far from the ocean rocks. It was dangerous to stay near them, because they might be guarded in the daytime. He found a clump of tall grass and sat down. He took off his rubber boots and ate 3 more tangerines. He could have eaten 12, but he hadn't seen any tangerines on this island, and he could not risk running out of something to eat. My father slept all day and only woke up late in the afternoon when he heard a funny voice saying, "Queer, queer, what a queer little dock. I mean, dear, dear, what a queer little rock." My father saw a tiny paw rubbing itself on its knapsack. He lay very still, and the mouse, it was a mouse, hurried away muttering to himself, "I must smell Tumduddy. I must tell somebody." There's a little mouse. My father waited a few minutes and then started down the beach because it was almost dark now, and he was afraid the mouse really would tell somebody. He walked all night, and 2 scary things happened. First, he had to sneeze, so he did, and someone close by said, "Is that you, monkey?" And my father said, "Yes." And the voice said, "You must have something on your back, monkey." And my father said, "Yes," because he did. He had his knapsack on his back. "What do you have on your back, monkey?" asked the voice. My father didn't know what to say, because what would a monkey have on its back? And how would it sound telling someone about it? Then another voice said, "I bet you're taking your sick grandmother to the doctor's." My father said, "Yes," and hurried on. Quite by accident, he found out later that he had been talking to a pair of tortoises. The second thing that happened was that he nearly walked right between 2 wild boars who were talking. There are the wild boars. Do you see him? See Elmer Elevator? That's a silly name, isn't it? He heard them talking in solemn whispers. When he first saw the dark shapes, he thought they were boulders, and just in time he heard one of them say, "There are 3 signs of a recent invasion. First, fresh tangerine peels were found under the wahoo bush near Ocean Rocks. Second, a mouse reported an extraordinary rock some distance from the Ocean Rocks, which upon further investigation wasn't there. However, more fresh tangerine peels were found at that spot, which is the 3rd sign of invasion. Since tangerines do not grow on our island, someone must have brought them across the Ocean Rocks from the other island, which may or may not have something to do with the appearance and or disappearance of the extraordinary rock reported by the mouse." After a long silence, the other boar said, I think we're taking this too seriously. Those peels probably floated over here by themselves, and you know that mice are unreliable. Besides, if there had been an invasion, I would have seen it." "Perhaps you're right," said the first boar. "Shall we retire?" Whereupon they both trundled back into the jungle. Well, that taught my father a lesson, and after that he saved all his tangerine peels. He walked all night toward morning and came to the river. Then his troubles really began. There are the tortoises. I think I'll keep going since that was a short chapter. Chapter 5. My father meets some tigers. The river was very wide and muddy, and the jungle was gloomy and dense. The trees grew close to each other, and what room there was between them was taken up by great high ferns with sticky leaves. My father hated to leave the beach, but he decided to start along the riverbank, where at least the jungle wasn't quite so thick. He ate 3 tangerines, making sure to keep all the peels this time, and put on his rubber boots. My father tried to follow the riverbank, but it was very swampy, and as he went farther, the swamp became deeper. When it was almost as deep as his boot tops, he got stuck in the oozy, mucky mud. My father tugged and nearly pulled his boots right off, but at last he managed to wade to a drier place. Here the jungle was so thick that he could hardly see where the river was. He unpacked his compass and figured out the direction he should walk in order to stay near the river. But he didn't know that the river made a very sharp curve away from him just a little way beyond. And so, as he walked ahead, he was getting farther and farther away from the river. It was very hard to walk in the jungle. The sticky leaves of the ferns caught at my father's hair, and he kept tripping over roots and rotten logs. Sometimes the trees were clumped so closely together that he couldn't squeeze between them and had to walk the long way around. He began to hear whispery noises, but he couldn't see animals anywhere. The deeper into the jungle he went, the surer he was that something was following him. And then he thought he heard whispery noises on both sides of him as well as behind. He tried to run, but he tripped over more roots, and the noises only came nearer. Once or twice he thought he heard something laughing at him. At last, he came into a clearing and ran right into the middle of it so that he could see anything that might try to attack him. Was he surprised when he looked and saw 14 green eyes coming out of the jungle all around the clearing, and when the green eyes then turned into 7 tigers. The tigers walked around him in a big circle, looking hungrier all the time, and then they sat down and began to talk. I suppose you thought that we didn't know you were trespassing in our jungle. The next tiger spoke. I suppose you're going to say you didn't know it was our jungle. Did you know that not one explorer has ever left this island alive, said the third tiger. My father thought of the cat and knew this wasn't true, but of course he had too much sense to say so. One does not contradict a hungry tiger. The tigers went on talking in turn. You're our first little boy, you know. I'm curious to know if you're especially tender. Maybe you think we have regular meal times, but we don't. We eat whenever we're hungry, said the fifth tiger. And we're hungry right now. In fact, I can hardly wait, said the sixth tiger. I can't wait, said the seventh tiger. And then all the tigers said together in a loud roar, let's begin right now. And they moved in closer. My father looked at those 7 hungry tigers and had an idea. He quickly opened his knapsack and took out the chewing gum. The cat had told him that tigers loved chewing gum, which was very scarce on the island. So he threw them each a piece, but they only growled, as fond as we are of gum, we'd like you even better. And they moved so close, he could feel them breathing on his face. But this is very special chewing gum, said my father. If you keep chewing it long enough, it will turn green. And then if you plant it, it will grow more chewing gum. So the sooner you start chewing, the sooner you'll have more. The tigers said, well, you don't say. Isn't that fine? And as each one wanted to be the first to plant the chewing gum, they all unwrapped their pieces and began chewing as hard as they could. Every once in a while, the tiger would look into another's mouth and say, nope, it's not done yet, until finally they were all so busy looking into each other's mouths that to make sure no one was getting ahead that they forgot all about my father. That was a pretty good idea with the chewing gum. And that is the end of chapter 5. So we'll continue with chapters 6 and 7 next time. Have a great day, guys. And I hope you're enjoying My Father's Dragon by Ruth Stiles Gannett.